All-pro wideout Stefon Diggs' first year in Houston is over just as it was getting started. The former Bills and Vikings wideout left Sunday's win over the Colts after suffering a non-contact injury to his knee. Texans head coach DeMeco Ryans announced on Tuesday that he had been diagnosed with a season-ending torn ACL. The Texans are currently 6-2, 2 games ahead of the Colts for first place in the AFC South. We're now joined by CBS Sports NFL analyst John Breech. And John, I feel like when it rains, it pours for the Texans, already without Nico Collins, at least for another week. And now losing another wideout, this time for the year in Stefon Diggs. Now, this was a team making plenty of noise to come out of the AFC. But John, after this news with Diggs, just how are you viewing this Texans team now?
Well, I think if you're the Texans, you're still optimistic about the rest of your season. Remember, we saw them play very well offensively last year when Stefon Diggs was not on the team. But as far as the short term goes, this is a huge problem for Thursday night because they play against the Jets in New York. You're down to Tank Dell basically as your #1 wide receiver. As you said, Kiana, Nico Collins isn't going to be back until possibly week 10 at the earliest because he's still on injured reserve. So now you don't have Stefon Diggs. Now you don't have Nico Collins. But I think the one thing, if you are Houston, is that you go to New York, you can rely heavily on your rushing attack. Joe Mixon has been one of the more underrated players in the NFL this year. He's averaging over 100 yards per game on the ground, which ranks 3rd in the league behind only Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley. So I think for Thursday, this is rough. But going forward, if you get Nico Collins back, you can get back to the offense that we've seen from the Texans. You'll have Nico Collins, you'll have Tank Dell, you'll have Dalton Schultz at tight end, you'll have Joe Mixon. So yes, the Diggs injury hurts, but as you said, this team's at 6-2. They've got the bull by the horns in the AFC South. They are the absolute front runner right now. So I do think it's an injury they can get through, but obviously it won't be easy.
Yeah, adding salt to that wound with a quick turnaround. That's on Thursday night with the meeting against the Jets. Well, meanwhile, the Texans' Week 8 opponent, the Colts, maybe with some head-scratching quotes coming out of that game. And I'm talking about their second-year quarterback getting gassed during Sunday's game. But Anthony Richardson will now be able to at least catch his breath on the bench, as 39-year-old teammate Joe Flacco now has gotten the starting nod going forward. Now, John, did the Colts make the right move benching Richardson and starting Flacco in your eyes?
Well, I feel like if you're the Colts, I don't think you had a choice here. Look, right now, Joe Flacco gives this team the best chance to win. The Colts are only 1 game out of the last wild card spot. They're only 2 games back in the AFC South. They absolutely still have a chance to get to the playoffs, and Joe Flacco gives you the best chance to get to the playoffs. Now, if you look at the rest of their schedule, they have a Week 14 bye. So if I'm Shane Steichen, that's kind of where I'm staring at. If Joe Flacco gets you that Week 14 bye and you're still in it, Flacco stays on as quarterback. But if the Colts lose a few games between now and then you let Anthony Richardson finish the season and let him develop, because that really is the one thing here that hurts when you put him on the bench, is he's not going to be able to develop. But the bottom line is, when your quarterback is completing fewer than 50% of his passes, you can't win in the NFL. Anthony Richardson, 44.1% on the season. That's a number from like 1972, Kiana. You just really can't win. And you look at NFL teams this season, 5-10 when they complete under 50% of their passes. You look at last year, 12-31 overall when they complete under 50% of their passes. So you put yourself behind the 8 ball when the quarterback can't complete passes, and Anthony Richardson wasn't able to. So I think starting Joe Flacco was the smart decision for Indianapolis.
Hey, Breech, you said Flacco gives the Colts a good chance to make the playoffs. If we all recall, it was about a year ago. He also gave the Browns a chance to make the playoffs and did so. Well, meanwhile, Ravens making moves on a Monday morning, acquiring Deontay Johnson in a trade with the Panthers. Just how does this move change your outlook on Baltimore's season?
Well, I already thought Baltimore was one of the top 3 teams in the AFC. I'm not sure how much higher I can put them. It feels like it's the Chiefs, Bills, and Ravens, who, by the way, all traded for a receiver before the deadline. We already saw DeAndre Hopkins going to Kansas City, Amari Cooper going to Buffalo, and now Deontay Johnson going to Baltimore. I think this is the most interesting one of those teams because the Ravens didn't necessarily need to make this move, but when the Panthers are out there just giving players away for free, the Ravens only had to give up a 5th-round pick. You do that. If you can get a talent like Deontay Johnson for a 5th-round pick, you absolutely have to do it. And you look at Baltimore's offense, I think some people might be thinking, hey, why add a wide receiver? Well, guess what? The Ravens offense has actually been pretty good through the air. Not only do they have the #1 rushing attack, but Lamar Jackson averages the 7th most passing yards per game going into week 9. So they've been balling out through the air. And when you look at Deontay Johnson adds to the passing game, they already have Zay Flowers, who has been a great one receiver this year. Now you have Deontay Johnson. Now you have Rashad Bateman. That's a pretty strong receiving trio. And oh yeah, if you're playing the Ravens, you also have to worry about stopping Derrick Henry. So this makes it an offense that was already difficult to stop is now even more difficult. It's a Rubik's Cube that you're trying to solve blindfold, and good luck to every defense that's playing the Ravens.
So as what Breech is telling us, the rich getting richer out there in Baltimore. John Breech, as always, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for stopping by. And speaking of those Ravens, we'll get to see Johnson with his new signal caller Sunday on CBS as the Ravens host the ascending Broncos. Jalen Hurts and Co in action hosting the Christian Kirkless Jaguars, and an AFC East showdown with Josh Allen and the Bills hosting Tua and the Dolphins. You can catch all that action over on CBS or streaming on Paramount+.